My sister Penelope believed that the moment she said "I do" at the altar, she wouldn't just be gaining a husband, she'd be securing the deed to a historic estate worth $5.2 million. She planned everything with meticulous precision, including blocking all my wedding invitations so she could be the first bride in the family. But Penelope overlooked one crucial detail. My grandmother hadn't left behind a standard will. She created a living trust, and this trust didn't care who threw the grander celebration. It only cared about who stepped into the trustee's office with a marriage certificate first. Standing in the grand ballroom, overlooking the windswept lake, Penelope glowing in her immaculate white gown, and savoring her moment, rose to her feet and lifted her glass, drunk on her own power. "Cheers to me," she declared, her voice ringing against the newly refinished oak floors. The chandelier she had imported from Italy cast dramatic shadows over her face as she gestured widely with her champagne flute. "And Mom and Dad, look at these floors. Look at these Italian curtains. Aren't they gorgeous?" My mother practically beamed from her seat at the head table. My father nodded, already halfway through his third drink. Penelope paused, savoring the hush in the room like it was another gift meant for her alone. But here's the best news. Her smile sharpened into something predatory. "You all know that old drooping willow tree by the lake? The haunted-looking one?" The room went still. Even the catering staff froze. Penelope burst into laughter, harsh and jarring against the elegance she'd paid $20,000 to create. "Next week, the logging crew comes. Boom, tree gone. That spot will be a massive DJ stage overlooking the lake. Goodbye gloominess, hello partying." My parents applauded without hesitation. "Great idea, honey," my mother chirped. "It's too old anyway." Practically collapsing, my blood surged hot. The applause warped and dulled, like I was underwater. That wasn't just a tree. That willow was my grandmother's soul, the place she spent every afternoon for 40 years reading under soft sunlight, watching the seasons shift across the lake. And Penelope clearly forgot who my husband was, forgot she was about to jab a stick into the hornet's nest of the legal world, tree law. In Vermont, that is the fastest way to turn a 5-star wedding into a financial disaster. And mark my quiet. Patient Mark, whom she dismissed as boring and told to stand in the back because there weren't enough seats, was a certified arborist. And me, I didn't sit still. My hand drifted to the cool leather of my handbag, knowing exactly what waited inside. I've been preparing for this moment, taught to understand my fury. You need to understand Harrington Manor, a 12-bedroom estate in Vermont, built in 1920 by my great-grandfather back when old money meant something in New England. Classic colonial revival architecture, white columns, black shutters, a sweeping wraparound porch overlooking 20 acres of pristine lakefront. But the highlight wasn't the house. It was the massive weeping willow planted by my great-grandfather in 1924. The year my grandmother was born. It was her sanctuary, the place she read when she was healthy, paperback on her lap, tea in a thermos by her side. The branches dipped so low they brushed the water, forming a curtain that made the space feel like a secret world. The manor itself operated as a high-end wedding venue, bringing in about $450,000 in net profit a year booked out 18 months ahead. A legacy passed through generations. In our family, roles were carved in stone. I am Jessica, the practical CPA, the one with spreadsheets, tax returns, ponytails, and sensible shoes. The boring one. And Penelope, she's the star, the golden child, the oxygen consumer who needs constant attention. She has 80,000 followers on social media, calls herself a lifestyle influencer, and hasn't held a real job in 6 years. That contrast turned brutal when my grandmother fell sick 2 years ago. My life shrank to a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic. I slept on a sofa to keep watch on her ventilator. For 6 months, the only sounds I heard were the steady beep beep of the monitors and my own voice reading her favorite novels, hoping she could hear me through the haze of sedation. I learned every rise and fall in her vitals. I knew which nurses were competent and which ones required double checking. I held her hand through procedures, crises, and tiny victories. And Penelope? The night the doctor said Grandma's lungs were failing, she was in Tulum, Mexico, with EDM music pounding through the walls. I called her, panic gripping me, believing she'd rush home. Her voice blasted through the speaker, annoyed and full of blame. Jess, don't be dramatic. Being around sick people ruins my positive energy, and I need it for live streaming. You take care of Grandma? Bye. Then the click. No, I love you. No, tell her I care. Just silence and that long mechanical beep after the call. That's when I realized Penelope wasn't just selfish. She was parasitic. She was still using the annual $10,000 education and development fund Grandma left for both of us using it for her influencer lifestyle while I survived on protein. Bars and bitter hospital coffee and now seeing her toast herself with champagne. Brag about cutting down Grandma's willow. Flaunting a room redecorated with money that wasn't hers, I reached my breaking point. I looked down at my handbag. Inside was a pre-printed, itemized invoice. Mark squeezed my hand a silent question. I nodded. Let the games begin. The real war began the day Grandma died. A Tuesday in late January, on a Vermont morning so white it hurt to look at the sky. I held her hand when the monitor flatlined, when the steady beep stretched into one long sound that meant she was gone. I didn't cry. I was too empty. I just sat there holding her cooling hand until the nurses gently ushered me out so they could prepare her body. 3 days later, we gathered in the Manor's living room for the estate documents. My parents sat dressed in funeral black, already imagining what they'd inherit. Penelope perched on the arm of the sofa, her phone face down, the longest I'd ever seen her go without touching it. Attorney Gibson, the independent successor trustee, sat in Grandma's favorite wingback chair, portfolio open on his lap. 70-something, white-haired, and steady as granite. Before we begin, he said, I want to make something very clear. Margaret Harrington was exceptionally specific. This document was revised 6 times in the last 3 years to avoid ambiguity. My mother leaned forward. Of course. We know she wanted everything to go to the girls. Not exactly, he replied, and the room dropped into silence. He adjusted his glasses and read clearly. The entire Harrington Manor buildings, land, furnishings, and business operations has been placed into a revocable living trust. Beneficiary rights activate for whichever granddaughter presents a certified marriage certificate to the trustee first. Silence. I'm sorry, what? My the clerk was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who barely lifted her eyes from the computer monitor. The entire process took 20 minutes. No flowers, no music, no white dress. Just 2 people who loved each other, signing their names on government forms while fluorescent bulbs buzzed faintly overhead. When the clerk finally handed us the certified marriage certificate, something in her expression softened. Congratulations. Happy Valentine's Day. Mark kissed me in the hallway outside, simple and tender, and something shifted deep inside my chest. Not just triumph, though, that pulsed through me, but something deeper, a sense that maybe, finally, I had chosen myself. We tried to share the news properly. The moment we stepped out of the bureau, still holding our matching copies of the certificate, I took out my phone and called my mother. She answered on the 3rd ring. Jessica, this isn't a good time. I'm at the florist with Penelope, looking at centerpieces. Mom, I need to tell you something important. My voice trembled, though I wasn't sure if it was nerves or excitement. Mark and I got married today. Silence. Then what? We went to City Hall. We're married. I have the certificate right here, and I'm taking it to Attorney Gibson tomorrow morning. Stop it, Jessica. My mother's voice turned cold, sharp as cracked ice. Stop it right now. Signing administrative papers is not a wedding. That's not how this works. Don't overshadow Penelope's glory with some pathetic courthouse stunt. Mom, it's not a stunt. We're legally. I don't want to hear it. This is exactly the kind of selfish, attention-seeking behavior I'd expect from you right now. Penelope is planning something beautiful, something meaningful. You don't get to ruin that with your jealousy. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen on the courthouse steps, phone still pressed to my ear, feeling like I'd been slapped. Mark slipped an arm around my shoulders, steady and warm. Hey, he murmured. We knew this might happen. I know. I just thought maybe she'd be happy for us. Even a little. He pulled me closer. We don't need her approval. We have each other. And we have the law on our side. He was right, but it still stung. I didn't give up, though. That weekend, I went to the post office and mailed a formal wedding announcement, along with a photocopy of the registration, via certified mail to my parents' house address, specifically to Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. I paid extra for tracking and delivery confirmation. Everything official, everything documented. I also emailed a save the date to my parents and extended family for a small celebration. We planned in March, nothing elaborate, just cake and champagne in our apartment. A chance to celebrate with people who genuinely cared. No one responded. The certified mail updated to delivered 3 days later, signed for by someone at the residence. Still nothing. I only learned why because my cousin Lucas felt guilty enough to confess over drinks. Penelope had been staying at our parents' house that week, helping with wedding planning. She intercepted the mailman, signed for the letter herself, saw my name on the return address, and opened it before my parents ever touched it. When she saw the marriage certificate copy, she ripped everything up and threw it into the kitchen trash. She told your parents you were sending spam, Lucas said, wincing. And when your mom asked, Penelope lied and said she'd called Attorney Gibson, and he confirmed it was a fake document you forged to stir drama. They never knew the truth. As for the email, Penelope's sabotage was even more calculated. She logged into the family email account, the shared one my parents still inexplicably use for important communication, and set an automatic filter to delete any message containing the word wedding sent from my address. But she didn't stop there. She wanted total control of the story. Penelope messaged the family group chat, the same one I'd been quietly removed from months earlier. Hey, everyone, just a heads up. Jessica is going through a mental crisis with Mark right now. She's stressed because she can't marry soon, and it's making her depressed about the trust situation. For her mental health, please don't ask her about weddings or anything related. She needs space. Love you all. She protected me by silencing me, painting me as a fragile, unstable mess who couldn't handle reality. Meanwhile, she was planning a wedding that cost more than most people make in a year, treating my grandmother's estate like her personal renovation budget. But I didn't need their approval. I needed the law. 3 days later, on February 17th, I brought the marriage registration to Attorney Gibson's downtown office. His secretary walked me into a wood-paneled conference room that smelled faintly of old books and leather polish. Gibson looked up from his desk, saw the document in my hand, and smiled. Jessica, I had a feeling I'd be seeing you. I placed the certificate on his desk. The conditions of the trust have been met. He lifted the document, inspected it thoroughly, and nodded. Indeed, they have. This is a certified marriage certificate issued by the state of Vermont, correctly filed and notarized. Congratulations, Mrs. He paused. You kept your maiden name for professional reasons. I'm a CPA. All my credentials are under Harrington. Practical. He pulled a different folder from a drawer. Jessica, as of this moment, you are the sole legal owner of Harrington Manor. All property, all business assets, all accounts tied to the estate. No need for probate. The trust activates immediately upon presentation. The words washed over me. Sole legal owner. It was real. He began typing a formal document. I'll file this with the county recorder today. I'll also send a notice of ownership and a preservation order to your parents. They are currently listed as interim property managers. They will need to cease making decisions regarding the estate and return all keys and access codes within 30 days. 30 days? Standard timeline. Though, if they're reasonable, I slipped the card into my wallet beside our newly minted marriage certificate. Right after our meeting, Gibson mailed the notice of ownership and preservation order to my parents via certified mail. But in a twist of bitter irony, Penelope was the one who signed for it yet again. And once more, she tucked it away, assuming it was nothing more than tedious paperwork from a senile lawyer trying to meddle with her wedding vision. I already held legal ownership, but they continued marching forward as if they controlled everything, and I let them, while Penelope was secretly stashing legal documents beneath her bed. She was also busy picking out a groom. She chose Seth, a 28-year-old lifestyle influencer who ran in the same curated social circles she did. With 50,000 followers and a camera-ready smile that never reached his eyes, he looked good in photos, which was all she truly needed. They had been dating all of 3 weeks when she proposed. Yes, she proposed during a staged sunset photo shoot on the beach, complete with a photographer she'd hired to catch every angle for her content. Seth agreed because marrying Penelope meant instant access to a $5.2 million estate and a matching wedding venue for his brand. The ceremony was set for late March. 6 short weeks away, just enough time for renovations and peak content output. She wanted perfection, all of it live-streamed. I learned this through my cousin Lucas, who went to their engagement party. His voice was heavy with guilt when he called Jess. I thought you should know. Your parents are pouring money into fixing up the manor for the wedding. Your mom said they want to invest in Penelope's future and make sure everything looks perfect online. My stomach clenched. How much money? I asked. I'm not sure, but contractors are everywhere. They were doing the bridal suite, the banquet hall, refinishing the floors. I called my mother one last time, hoping to stop the financial bleeding. She picked up immediately, already irritated. Jessica, I don't have time for this. Mom, listen. You can't authorize renovations. You legally don't have the right. Shut up, Jessica. Just shut up. Her voice exploded through the phone. You're jealous. This is an investment in Penelope. She's actually doing something meaningful with her life. Mom, I don't care about your legal jargon. You're bitter, and I'm ashamed you're my daughter. Don't call me again until you can be happy for your sister. Click. I stared at the screen, numb. Mark leaned in the kitchen doorway. She hung up? You tried, he said gently, taking the phone from my hand. You warned them. Over and over. They chose not to listen. Whatever happens now is on them. I warned them. They silenced me. I announced my marriage. They pretended it didn't exist. So let them pour money into my property. Let them renovate my asset. This would be the sweetest trap. For more than a month, from mid-February to late March, contractors flooded the manor. Twice I drove by just to watch. The place buzzed with workers, painters, electricians, flooring crews, furniture delivery trucks. According to Lucas's guilty updates, My parents spent $32,000 repainting the banquet hall from Grandma's soft sage green to a stark, modern white. They decorated the bridal suite with new furniture, a gauzy four-poster bed, an antique vanity worth more than my car. They restored the oak floors to a golden shine. Meanwhile, Penelope burned through $20,000 of her own, almost certainly from Grandma's education, fund on Italian chandeliers. She hired an interior designer to source velvet curtains in the exact shade of blush pink she wanted. She upgraded the outdoor lighting, installed a top-tier sound system, and ordered custom signage with her and Seth's names. Twice a day, my phone lit up with her live streams. She tested wedding dresses she tried on 4 before choosing the $15,000 one. She showcased flowers flown in from overseas, shoes dyed to match the curtains, and every step of the Manor's transformation. You guys, this is insane. She squealed, sweeping her camera across the hall. I'm literally creating the wedding venue in Vermont. Like, you are going to be begging to have your weddings here. The comments poured in. Take my money. Venue goals. Can't wait for the big day. Sometimes Mark and I watched at dinner. He'd shake his head at the chandelier bell. She's spending their retirement, he muttered. Your parents will be working forever. I know, my appetite vanished. I should stop them. They won't listen, he replied. Then don't document everything. So I did. I made a spreadsheet because I'm a CPA and spreadsheets are my love language. I tracked every renovation, every purchase, every live stream, every Instagram story. I didn't know exactly what I'd do with it yet, but I was building something airtight. By early April, the Manor looked stunning magazine-level beautiful. Penelope had turned it into a dream venue. Using money and property that never belonged to her, the rehearsal dinner was set for Friday night. The invitation arrived not from my parents, but forwarded through Lucas. Heavy cardstock. Gold foil. Are we really going? Mark asked. Oh, we're going. I smiled, thinking of the detailed invoice sitting in my bag. We wouldn't miss it. We arrived as sunset painted the lake orange and pink. Inside, the banquet hall glowed beneath the expensive Italian chandeliers. The refinished floors gleamed. The blush curtains framed every window. Penelope was holding court near the bar, surrounded by something inside my chest, not my heart, that had long grown calluses after years of being the designated afterthought. No, this was something deeper. The sound of whatever patience I had left fracturing into 1,000 irretrievable shards. Penelope's comment about getting rid of Grandma's gloominess still rang through the banquet room. Floating in the air like a sentence of execution for the willow, that tree had stood by the lake for a century. It had been there when my grandmother was a young bride. It had shaded her through every summer of her long life. And now my sister wanted to turn it into firewood for better lighting in her live stream. Under the table, Mark squeezed my hand 3 pulses. Our signal. But this time, he didn't wait for my response. He rose abruptly, his chair scraping loudly enough to slice through Penelope's laughter. You're not touching a single root of that willow, he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The table fell silent. Penelope stared at him, surprise flickering into amusement before hardening into patronizing annoyance. She rolled her eyes dramatically. Sit down, Jessica. And your boyfriend, too. The homeowner is speaking. I stood beside Mark, my napkin falling forgotten to the floor. My voice came out sharp, cold, each word crisp, as if I were reciting figures from a spreadsheet. That's exactly the issue, I said. The homeowner is speaking, and she's telling you to get the hell out of her house. My father laughed, actually laughed. Jessica, stop the theatrics. We've all tolerated your little tantrum. But, Mark, I said quietly, eyes locked on Penelope's. Show them. Mark my gentle, soft-spoken. Always in the background, Mark set his leather briefcase. onto the table with a heavy thunk that made the wine glasses tremble. He'd carried that briefcase all night, and I knew Penelope had probably assumed it was some accessory he thought made him look professional. She had no idea. He opened his laptop and connected it to the venue projector, something we'd arranged earlier under the guise of showing a slideshow of family pictures. The staff had been eager to help. "Please," Mark said as the projector hummed to life. "Look at the screen." The first image, the official trust confirmation document, state seal of Vermont shining in the corner. Next, the certified property deed, dated 2 years ago, stamped clearly with one name, Jessica Marie Harrington, the legal owner. The color drained from Penelope's face like someone had yanked the plug out of her foundation. I watched, fascinated. Her bronze complexion faded to a chalky gray in seconds. "What?" she whispered, her voice catching. That can't be real," my mother added, already rummaging in her purse for her reading glasses. "Jessica, what is this? Some fake?" "Call Attorney Gibson," I said calmly, laying my phone on the table. "His number's right here. He's the successor trustee. He'll verify everything." My father stood now, face darkening to the shade he used before launching into sermons about duty and family loyalty. "Your grandmother would never—" "She did." I cut in. 2 years ago, when she fell sick and you were too busy to visit. When Penelope was posting beach shots from Tulum instead of coming home. When I was the one in the hospital holding her hand while she made her decisions. Mark stepped forward, and I saw a version of him I had never witnessed before. Gone was the quiet, unobtrusive man who faded into the background. His posture straightened, his tone sharpened, the stance of someone who knew the power of his knowledge. "Penelope," he said, his voice taking on that authoritative, professional cadence. "You might want to Google the term tree law before you call any loggers." She blinked at him, confused and angry. "Tree law? What are you even talking about?" "That willow," Mark continued, pulling a folder from his briefcase, "is a specimen tree. Over 100 years old. Planted in 1924, and as a certified arborist, yes. Penelope, an actual certified arborist. Not a quirky hobbyist. I've appraised its value at $80,000. The number hung heavy in the air. Seth's eyes widened. He might not grasp legalities, but he understood dollar signs. And here's the important part. Mark went on, steel in his voice. Under Vermont law, intentionally cutting down someone else's tree is timber trespass. That means treble damages. Triple compensation. He paused, letting the silence stretch. His gaze swept across Penelope, my parents, the entire table. "So if your saw touches that tree, you owe my wife and me $240,000. He held up 3 fingers. 80,000 times 3. Add legal and court fees. You're looking at $250,000. Well, wife?" My mother whispered. I pulled the frame marriage. Certificate from my purse, a simple silver frame that cost more than the actual license fee, and set it in front of her. "We married on Valentine's Day," I said. "At City Hall. Clerk gave us mints." "Perfect day." My mother clutched her chest. My father turned a deeper shade of purple. But it was Penelope I watched. Penelope, whose calculating influencer mind was multiplying damages, subtracting savings, comparing follower engagement to looming debt. "And losing? You can't do this," she said. But the confidence was gone. "It's my wedding. You're being selfish and selfish?" I laughed, short, sharp, humorless. "Let's talk about selfish." Immediately, my parents began accusations, disappointment, the usual script. I'd heard it all before: cruel, vindictive, jealous, ruining Penelope's big day, heartless, the problem child. The family failure, I didn't defend myself. Numbers spoke louder than their noise. Technically, the 30-day vacate notice Gibson sent had already expired. They were trespassing. I reached into my bag and pulled out the document. I prepared 3 days earlier after Lucas confirmed that Penelope planned to cut down the tree. An itemized invoice. Printed on my professional letterhead. Every figure legally justified. I tossed it onto the table in front of Penelope. It landed with a satisfying smack. "You want the wedding to continue?" I said, voice cool and businesslike. "Fine, pay up." I held up the invoice and read aloud, ensuring every person in the room heard every line. Market rate venue rental for a 12-bedroom historic estate, $15,000, emergency. Booking fee for under 24 hours, $35,000, tree risk insurance for specimen vegetation, $50,000, emotional. Distress compensation, $30,000. I met Penelope's gaze. The total is $130,000. Silence swallowed the room. Even the servers at the kitchen doors froze. My mother found her voice first. "You're insane. Charging your sister for her own wedding? In her own family home?" I leaned in close, so close, only she and Penelope could hear, but just far enough that my father and Seth couldn't. I know Penelope tore up the certified mail I sent. I whispered. My mother's face blanched. Of course she knew. "Mom," I added softly, "destroying someone else's USPS mail is mail fraud. A federal crime. You really want me filing a police report before the wedding photos?" Penelope's breath hitched. Fear replaced whatever bravado she had left. She knew I could ruin her entire brand forever. Straightening, I switched back to my professional tone so the whole table could hear. "This is a business transaction. Luxury venue means luxury fees." "Jessica," my father started, shifting into a smoothing over voice. "No, Dad," I said, calm and firm. "We discuss it now. The venue requires full payment before the event." I tapped the invoice. "But since it's family, I'll waive emotional distress and the emergency fee. I'm offering a settlement of $25,000 that covers the rental and part of the insurance." I turned to him and my mother. "As for the $52,000, you and Penelope spent renovating my property. $32,000 from you, $20,000 from her. Consider it a non-refundable deposit. A housewarming gift. You can't expect us to have that much cash." My father sputtered. "I don't want cash," I replied, pulling out a check request form and a pen. "I want a paper trail. Write a personal check or wire it. Either works." I felt something splinter inside my chest, not my heart, which had already toughened over years of being treated like a backup plan. No, this break was different. This was the precise moment my patience shattered into 1,000 pieces too small to ever glue back together. Penelope's declaration about getting rid of Grandma's gloomy old willow still clung to the air of the banquet room, floating like a death sentence. That tree had stood by the lake for a century. It had watched my grandmother walk down the aisle. It had shaded her during every summer of her long, stubbornly beautiful life. And now my sister wanted to turn it into kindling so her wedding photos would have better lighting. Mark gave my hand 3 short squeezes beneath the table, our signal. But this time he didn't wait for mine. He pushed his chair back so abruptly the scrape against the floor cut through Penelope's laughter like a blade. "You're not touching a single root of that willow tree, Penelope." His tone wasn't loud, but it carried. The entire table froze. Penelope's expression flickered surprise, annoyance, then settling into familiar condescension. She rolled her eyes with theatrical boredom. "Sit down, Jessica. And your boyfriend, too." "The homeowner is speaking." I rose beside Mark, the napkin slipping from my lap to the floor, forgotten. My voice came out sharp and winter cold. as precise as typing numbers into a spreadsheet. That is exactly the problem. The homeowner is speaking, and she is telling you to get the hell out of her house. My father laughed a full, dismissive laugh. Jessica, enough. We've all tolerated your little outbursts, but Mark, I said, not looking away from Penelope. Show them. Mark, my soft-spoken, gentle Mark, set his leather briefcase on the table with a decisive thud that made the glasses tremble. Penelope had assumed all evening that the case was just some accessory, a try-hard stylistic choice. She had no idea what it actually contained. He opened the laptop, connected it to the projector. Staff had kindly set up earlier when we told them we had a slideshow of family photos. Please, look at the screen, he said calmly as the projector hummed. Awake. The first page that flashed onto the wall was the trust. Confirmation official seal of Vermont stamped in the corner. Then the certified deed, dated 2 years ago. My name, Jessica Marie Harrington, printed clearly as legal owner. Penelope's face drained of color so quickly it was almost scientific. Her carefully bronzed complexion shifted to a chalky gray. What? She croaked. That's impossible. My mother pawed through her purse for her reading glasses. Jessica, what is this? A forgery? Call Attorney Gibson, I said, placing my phone on the table. He'll confirm every line. My father stood, face turning the shade that came before a lecture on duty and family. Your grandmother would never, she did, I cut in, 2 years ago. When she got sick. When none of you visited. When Penelope was posting from Tulum instead of coming home. When I was the one sitting with her in the hospital while she made her decisions. Mark stepped forward, and I saw a version of him I'd never seen before, shoulders squared, presence commanding. Penelope, he said, switching into his professional cadence. Google the phrase tree law. She blinked. Tree what? That willow is a specimen tree, Mark continued, pulling a folder from his case. It's over 100 years old. Planted in 1924. As a certified arborist, yes, Penelope. That's actually my profession. I've appraised it at $80,000. Seth's eyes widened. Money always reached him faster than words. And under Vermont state law, Mark added, cutting someone else's tree timber trespass requires treble damages. Triple the value. He held up 3 fingers. So the moment your saw touches that bark, you owe us $240,000. Add legal fees, it becomes $250,000. Still worth the lighting. My wife? My mother choked. Why did he say wife? I pulled the framed marriage certificate from my purse and set it in front of her. We got married on Valentine's Day, I said. City Hall, it was perfect. My mother clutched her chest. My father blazed purple, but I watched Penelope, the mental math, the panic, the unraveling. You can't do this, she whispered, voice trembling. This is my wedding. You're being selfish? Selfish? I laughed once, sharply. Let's talk about selfishness. My parents launched into familiar attacks, cruel, vindictive, jealous, ruining the wedding. I didn't argue. Numbers are my language. Emotions are theirs. And legally, the 30-day vacate notice had already expired. They were trespassing. I pulled out the itemized invoice I prepared the moment Lucas told me Penelope planned to butcher the willow. I tossed it onto the table. Want the wedding to continue? Then pay. I read each line aloud. Venue. Rental for 12-bedroom historic estate. $15,000. Emergency booking fee. $35,000 tree risk insurance fee. $50,000 emotional distress compensation. $30,000 total. $130,000. The room went dead still. Even the staff froze. You're insane, my mother cried, knocking her chair over. Charge your sister for her own wedding? I leaned close, voice low. I know Penelope destroyed the certified mail. That's federal mail fraud. My mother went pale. Penelope's defiance evaporated instantly. Think that'll look good in wedding photos? I asked, then aloud again, in my CPA voice. This is a business transaction. You want a luxury venue? Pay for it. Jessica, my father said, trying to sound reasonable. We'll discuss money later. No, the policy is payment up front. I tapped numbers into the calculator app. I'll waive the distress fee and surcharge. New total, $25,000. I looked at them. As for the $52,000 you spent renovating my house, consider it a non-refundable deposit I graciously accept. You can't expect us to carry cash. I'm a CPA, Dad. I want a paper trail. Check or a wire transfer? I set down the pen. The funds need to be secured tonight. If not in 10 minutes, the venue closes, the gates lock, and I cancel security. Penelope can explain to her followers why her wedding was canceled over a venue dispute. Silence. Then my mother began to cry. The night ended not with music, but with weeping, accusations, and the scratch of a pen writing a check. My mother sobbed. My father's hand shook. Penelope sat frozen, mascara streaked like melted ink. Seth stared at the invoice like it contained a curse. The check was for $25,000, made out to me. I held it up, inspected it, then tucked it into my wallet. The wedding will proceed tomorrow at 2, I announced. Mark and I will not be attending. Other commitments? My mother choked. This is my honeymoon fund, I said, gathering my things. Mark? He snapped his briefcase shut. Ready. We walked out to the cool night air, which smelled like spring and freedom. Mark opened the car door. I'd long stopped telling him he didn't have to, and I slid in feeling lighter. You were incredible, he said as he started the engine. We were, I corrected. Your tree law speech? You terrified them. He grinned. I practiced. Wanted the terminology perfect. Certified arborist, I teased, squeezing his hand. My hero. The wedding the next day looked, according to Lucas's secret photos, like a funeral with flowers. Penelope smiled with dead eyes. My parents posed like mannequins. The willow tree stood untouched, its branches whispering like it was laughing. Meanwhile, Mark and I were 30,000 feet above the Atlantic, champagne in hand, bound for Italy. He toasted to the coolest negotiation I've ever seen. Think they'll forgive us? He asked. I watched the clouds drift beneath us. Probably not, I said. And I don't think I need them to. That makes you free, he said, and he was right. I kept the manor. I hired a management company that projected profitability within a year: weddings, retreats, tours. The willow became a selling point. Mark developed a preservation program for it. Penelope, meanwhile, struggled credit card debt, a failing influencer career, a cramped apartment. Her posts reeked of desperation. She called my mother, crying weakly. I didn't ruin her life, I told Lucas. I stopped letting her ruin mine. People whispered, as they do. My parents retreated into silence. Penelope blocked me, and I discovered their absence felt like relief. Not lost. Mark and I built our own life: quiet mornings, peaceful dinners, monthly visits to the manor. Attorney Gibson later told me it was the coolest case of his career. You use every tool: trust law, tree law, mail fraud, invoices. A master class. I learned from the best, I said. My grandmother hadn't left the estate to me out of favoritism. She left it because she knew I'd protect it. Did I act selfishly? Cruelly? Vindictively? Maybe, probably. But if I'd stayed silent, let them destroy the willow, bulldoze my rights, rewrite reality, I would have betrayed everything my grandmother trusted me with. Thanks to my husband's expertise and my understanding of the law, I protected her legacy, turned a disaster profitable, gained a free renovation, and stepped out from under a family that never loved me without. Conditions. My lawyer said it was the coolest negotiation he'd ever witnessed. I think my grandmother would have agreed.